Hey there everybody, it's almost been a full year since Honkai Star Rail came out, and I just wanted to take the time to make this video showcasing my account as a day 1 player who's been playing since the release of this game, and with only missing about 1 to 2 days of login. This video is just going to serve as a snapshot of my account, so that I can look back on it in the future just to see how my account has progressed and how the game has changed. And also share with those who might be interested in what a day 1 account might look like in Honkai Star Rail. This video is not going to be anything too special, so don't expect any excessive editing, any crazy pulls, or any zero cycle shenanigans, as it's just going to be me talking mostly about my characters, my 1-year experience with the game, and the highs and lows I've experienced while playing. The first topic I want to get out of the way really quickly is going to be about how much money I've spent in the game so far in the first year, and addressing whether or not I'm a free-to-play player, which the simple answer is I am definitely not a free-to-play player, but I wouldn't consider myself a whale as well, as the only money I spent in this game so far is going to be the monthly pass and the battle pass, as both of them provide a really good amount of passive jades, as well as a lot of resources that are very valuable for my characters, and as someone who doesn't really want to spend their Trailblaze power on the calyxes. In terms of the jades that you can buy directly from the store, I haven't bought a single jade pack, as I feel like it takes the fun out of the game if I were to buy these jade packs and buy high eidolons of specific characters and getting them to be like E4, E6, S5 Gigacrack characters in my account, and take away the fun that I might have in in-game content, as much fun as you could have in a turn-based RPG game. As I'm more content with having a smaller roster of characters to grow and use in newer content, and just see which characters work, and maybe brush up some of my older characters that I haven't used in a while and see how well they fare in the newer content. With that out of the way, let's just dive into the characters with my account. I'll just be going over the characters that I currently use for the endgame content, or any characters that I have something interesting to say about them. But the first character I'm going to talk about is the character we should all have, the MC of this game. My character is on Preservation, as I find a little bit more value in using Preservation over the Destruction path. And if we take a look at his stats really quickly, it's nothing too special to talk about. 3.2k defense, 127 speed, and a crit ratio of 22 crit rate over 66 crit damage. If we take a look at his traces, they're not really too high leveled, as I don't use them as much as I would like to. Eidolons are at E6. His relics are going to be 2-piece Knight with 2-piece Guard, with his planar set being Belobog, as you'll see in a bit that his chest piece is on effect hit rate, as it allows him to get his taunts more often, as well as apply the fire debuff from his Trend Light Cone, which is very valuable for teams like Ratio and most recently Acheron. In terms of my use with him, he was very valuable early on in the game, as many of us only had 2 sustains in the Fire MC and Natasha, and was very valuable for clearing early game content, and specifically with him, he was very useful in Simulated Universe, especially against the Cocolia fights, being able to apply Fire Break weakness on the ice summons as well as Cocolia herself. He's been pretty good in the early game, and most recently, he found a niche on my Ratio team as a debuffer in the sustain slot, being able to proc the fire debuff and the taunt as well, and was pretty valuable until I replaced him with one of the newer sustain units that I'll talk about in a bit. If I did have more resources, I think I would build him more, but as of right now, I don't really have too much focus on him. The next character I'm going to talk about is going to be Bailu, and we're going to take a look at her stats really quickly. 6.5k HP, 142 speed, and everything else is pretty negligible. Effect res at 15.2%. It's a lot lower than I would like it to be, but it's good enough for now. She is on her signature light cone, and in terms of her traces, they're not really high leveled, and her Eidolons are at E0. For her relics, she's on 4-piece healer and 2-piece Penacony, since she's mostly ran with my Jing Yuan team, and her relics are anything interesting to look at as well. In terms of my experience with her, she was obtained pretty late into my account, and I've only had her for about maybe 4 months so far, but during that time she was pretty valuable as my second 5-star sustain, as she took over the role that my Lynx would have as my second healer in Memory of Chaos. And her performance has been surprising for me considering how low level her traces were, She's been very useful with the newer bosses that you might see in Memory of Chaos, with Sam being one of the better examples of how useful she is, as she applies a healing passive that whenever your teammates get hit, she applies a little bit of healing to them. And despite what public opinions might say about her, she is pretty valuable for the time that I used her, even with the amount of investment that I have in her, and is someone who I would recommend for players to build if they don't have their second 5-star sustain. The next character I'm going to talk about is going to be Luocha, who is my first limited 5-star sustain. And if we take a look at his stats really quickly, he has 3.1k attack, 143 speed, and he is also on his signature light cone, which I would like to say really quickly is not needed since he has a lot of good options and probably shouldn't be pulled if you're looking at pulling for his light cone. Eidolons, he's at E0, and his traces are okay leveled, as you don't really need to level too many of his traces besides his talent heal. Relics, he's on 2-piece healing, 2-piece speed, and 2-piece Bellabog. Again, his relics are nothing anything interesting to look at, since he is just my sustain unit. Overall, my experience with Luocha is that he is a very comfy healer. Being able to just basic attack for the entire time using him, and having auto heals every 2 turns as a fast Luocha is very valuable. As well as his ultimate, being able to apply weakness break when facing against imaginary weak enemies is also very valuable for helping my DPSs clear faster. And despite the newer 5-stars that he might face competition with, such as Fu Xuan, Wolfo, and Aventurine, he still holds up pretty well and has aged quite nicely throughout the first year of having him. Next unit I'm going to talk about is going to be Aventurine, the most recent 5-star sustain released in the game. I can't really say too much about him since I've only had him for a couple of days, but we'll take a look at his stats really quickly. He is on 3.9k defense, 113 speed, and a crit ratio of 48 crit rate over 172 crit damage. He is on the newest 4-star light cone, Concert for 2. His traces are relatively high level, with only missing a couple levels on the other traces that I don't have maxed. In terms of his relics, he is on 4-piece diver and 4-piece keel, as I wanted a little bit more of a sub DPS role from him instead of being a massive shielder. His relics are pretty interesting, as they allowed me to use any relics that I got unfortunate in the defense percent rolls to be able to be used, which is nice to have, as he has a lot of double crit on these relics. Aventurine, for my account, adds a lot of value as being a shielder, since my only shielders on my account were by Fire MC and March, which each have their own glaring issues, with Fire MC only having these small shields and March only being a single target shielder. Aventurine brought a lot of value with being an AoE shielder with relatively large shield, as more bosses in the near future might have mechanics that are countered by shields. There's not much else to say about him besides he performs his roles very well, being a sub DPS, sustainer, and debuffer in terms of his ultimate, and is definitely someone that newer players should definitely pick up if they're lacking a 5-star sustain. Moving on to the harmonies of my account, we'll start off with Sparkle. Sparkle wasn't originally a character that I was going to get in her initial banner release, as I'll talk about that in a bit. Looking at her stats, she's at 3.8k HP, 161 speed, and 191 crit damage, as well as on Dance 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 S5. For her Island, she's at E0, and her traces mostly leveled up to max except for a couple levels in everything except for basic. For her traces, everything is almost maxed except for one level in everything except for basics. For her traces, they're basically leveled up to max except for one levels on everything except for her basic. And then for her relics, she's on 2-piece speed, 2-piece rainbow, and 2-piece broken keel. All the relics are just mostly focusing on speed and crit damage with a little bit of effect res when I can. She is on an off-piece imaginary orb because I need the speed. But other than that, she's been an absolutely valuable unit, and a unit I would recommend for newer players if they don't have her, as she's a bit more universal compared to someone like Bronya. But yeah, it's an absolutely good unit. Next we have Ruan Mei, probably one of the most universal units in the game and on my roster as well. Looking at her stats, she has 4.7k HP, 1.2k defense, and 161 speed since I'm running her as a fast Ruan Mei. For her light cone, she is on Memories of the Past for the break effect and energy regeneration when needed. For her traces, everything is mostly maxed except for her basics, which aren't really needed. For her Eidolon, she is at E1 since her ultimate, giving Death Shred, is absolutely valuable for some of my teams. And then for her relics, she is on 2-piece speed and 2-piece break along with 2-piece Penacony. Most of her relic substats are focused on speed and break effect, with some of them having quite good stats, as I got pretty lucky in some of them, especially as something like this. She's on 2-piece Penacony because I mostly run her with Jingliu, although I would like to switch her to a Bon Whack or Broken Keel. I run her as a slow Ruan Mei. Other than that, she's been pretty valuable for my account, being pretty much used on almost any team that I could imagine using her on. She's been pretty valuable as she can pretty much be run on any team that I use and any game mode as well. She makes Simulator Universe a lot faster with her technique, allowing me to take less time in those Simulator Universe runs. Other than that, I would recommend pulling for her if you don't have her already, as well as her signature Lycone, which I plan on doing, just because it adds quite a bit of damage, and can be quite useful for zero cycle shenanigans in Memory of Chaos. The last Harmony unit I want to talk about is probably going to be my favorite Harmony in the game right now, which is going to be Bronya. For her stats, she's at 4.4k HP, 155 speed, which is a specific speed stat, which I'll talk about in a bit. And her crit damage is at 173 crit. For her light cone, she's on her signature. For her traces, everything is mostly maxed except for a couple minor traces, as well as her skill missing a level. For her Eidolon, she's at E0. And then for her relic, she is on 4-piece speed and 2-piece broken keel. Her stats, just like Sparkle, mostly focus on speed and crit damage as we'll go through them, as well as a bit of effect res for the broken keel effect. The reason why she's on 4-piece Eagle is because she's specifically speed tuned to be a hyper speed Bronya, meaning she can basic skill in the first turn of Memory of Chaos, which is pretty good for zero cycle shenanigans and whatnot. And also helps her be a little bit more universal in terms of her speed tuning, meaning I don't have to tune her just one speed below Jingliu, and can be used with other characters if needed. She still holds up well 1 year later and is kind of fun to use in the overworld since, you know, she has a gun. Well, no, besides that, she has a good amount of reach in terms of her basic. Other than that, absolutely fun unit to use, and is someone that you should pick up. Next, we're going to talk about my first limited DPS that I got on the game, Jing Yuan. We'll take a look at his stats really quickly. His stats are at 3.1k attack, 106 speed, and a crit ratio of 88.8 crit rate over 199 crit damage. He is on his signature Lycone before dawn, as a pretty universal Lycone for any Erudition character. For his traces, everything is mostly max except for this one lonely defense node and his basics. Eidolons, he's at E0, and for his relics, he's on 4-piece Duke with 2-piece Salsodo. I think in terms of relics, I think Jing Yuan's relics are probably the best in terms of rolls for my account, as I got pretty lucky in terms of the double crit rolls that I got in some of these pieces. Especially this rope right here, which rolled pretty nicely into some of the substats that I needed. And other than that, he's been a pretty good character for my account. Being the first limited DPS, he helped me clear quite a bit of content that I needed, especially in Memory of Chaos, and still holds up quite well with his release almost being a year old. He's one of the characters that basically got buffed throughout every patch. He is still a good character almost a year later, and whether or not you should pull for him is up to you, but for my account, he has served me quite well. Next, we'll talk about the actual first 5-star in my account, Himeko. I got Himeko from the beginner banner at the start of the game, and has recently found use in game modes like Pure Fiction. For her stats, she's at 3.2k attack, 102 speed, and a crit ratio of 58 crit rate over 124 crit damage. She is on her signature Lycone, not in the Milky Way. For her traces, she has kind of low investment for everything, as they should be leveled up a bit more. For her Eidolon, she's at E1. And then for her relics, she's on 4-piece Duke with 2-piece broken keel. Her relics are mostly hand-me-downs from Jing Yuan when I was looking for better substats in terms of his rolls. And then for the interesting planar set she's on, and why she's not on Salsodo, it's because I don't have a fire damage orb that's on set for Salsodo, and had to make do with a double crit roll on a broken keel orb. And she doesn't even have enough effect res to even make use of the broken keel effect, and she's at 25.2%. But she still does relatively good damage when I need to use her, and especially in Pure Fiction where she shines most in. I'll take the relics off of Jing Yuan and put it onto her, and she does quite well there. Definitely a character I slept on early in the game since I didn't really find most use with her, but now with the release of Pure Fiction, and sometimes in Simulator Universe, she does quite well. Definitely a fun character to use, and if you don't have her built or invested in, I would recommend once you have the time to. Next is going to be another 5-star we should all have as of recording, Dr.Ratio. For his stats, he's at 4k attack, speed at 105, and then his crit ratio is 87 crit rate over 165 crit damage. For his Lycone, he is on his signature Lycone because it gives quite a bit of extra stats compared to free-to-play options. although it's definitely not needed to pull for his light cones to see good damage from him. For his traces, mostly everything is leveled up to max, missing just a little bit for everything that's major. Then for his Eidolons, he is at E0. Then relics, he is on 2-piece Duke, 2-piece Diver, and 2-piece Salsodo. Some of his pieces were hand-me-downs for Jing Yuan again, and his Diver pieces are whatever I found good during the time I am relic farming for it. Salsodo is nothing interesting to look at. He is on an attack orb, since I do not have a good imaginary orb for him that's on set. Other than that, he is a unit that I found quite a bit of use once I had enough investment placed into him. He's one of the stronger units on my roster, and I use him quite a bit in terms of Memory of Chaos, and for simulated universe runs as well, with the Elation Path. If you haven't had him built, I would highly recommend once you have enough resources to put into him. For a character that was given out for free, he does quite well in terms of his performance, and is absolutely a good carry. Next character I want to talk about is Yanqing, my second 5-star. For his stats, he's at 3.3k attack, 115 speed, and a crit ratio of 47 crit rate over 185 crit damage. For his light cone, he is on Sleep Like the Dead, his signature, although sometimes I will switch it to Dr.Ratio if I plan on using him for any hard content. For his traces, they're decently invested into, needing quite a bit in anything that isn't his talent. And then for his Eidolons, he's at E0, and then for his relics, he is on 4-piece Ice and 2-piece Redolent Arena. Again, like my Himeko, his relics are mostly hand-me-downs from Jingliu, but have decent stats on them. Although his Redolent Arena pieces do need quite a bit of work if I ever intend on using him. Other than that, Yanqing actually holds a little bit of a special place in terms of me using him, as I use him quite a bit in the early games where I needed a good 5-star to farm early game mats like Stagnant Shadow and Simulated Universe runs. He was my go-to DPS, especially with runs like Remembrance and whatnot. He would carry those runs and help me clear harder difficulties. He has fallen off quite a bit ever since I got Jingliu, but with the arrival of Aventurine as one of the premier shielders, he could probably find a resurgence in my account if I ever decide to invest more into him. But other than that, despite what some public opinions might say about him, he's actually quite a good unit. Next, we'll talk about probably the pride and joy of my account, Jingliu. Looking at her stats really quickly, she's at 3k attack, 105 speed, since I'm running attack boots on her, and then a crit ratio of 47 over 249. For her light cone, she is on her signature light cone. For her traces, everything is fully maxed, including her basics. Don't ask me why. And then for her Eidolon, she's at E1, as it adds quite a bit to her personal damage. And then for her relics, she's on 4-piece Ice and 2-piece Redolent Arena. Most of the stats are quite nice to see, as they're mostly double crit, although some need quite a bit of work, like her S-piece and her boots. And then for her Redolent Arena pieces, she does need a bit of work on her rope. But considering that I haven't really touched her build since I got her all the way back in 1.4, her stats are pretty good. And I'm pretty content with them until I find time to get out of whatever relic cavern I'm farming in currently. Ever since getting her as my second limited DPS, she has absolutely carried me in any content that I need her in. Pure Fiction, Memory of Chaos, Simulated Universe runs. She absolutely destroys anything, and even against bosses that don't have ice weakness, she still does very well against them. It's just crazy to think that throughout the first year of the game, a character as strong as her exists that is able to just brute force content when given enough investment into. And I'm excited to see where the second year of Honkai Star Rail takes her in terms of whether or not she's still going to stay relevant, or maybe she'll fall off. Who knows, but I'll still enjoy using her regardless. The final 5-star I want to talk about is Clara. Looking at her stats really quickly, she's at 3.1k attack, 96 speed, and a crit ratio of 69 crit rate over 108 crit damage. For her Lycone, she's on the free-to-play option from the Herder shop on the Fall of an Eon. Her traces, everything is almost maxed except missing a couple, and all of her major traces. For her Eidolon, she's at E2 as the standard 5-star that I lost the most 50-50s to, but is a character I would rather like to lose 50-50s to, as she is quite a good character with these Eidolons, and is one of the standard characters that I actually still use. For her relic, she's on 2-piece Boxer, 2-piece Longevous, and 2-piece Salsodo. Her 2-piece Boxer set is a little cope, as despite her pretty good headpiece, her boots are absolutely abysmal, and I would like to switch off of this. 2-piece Longevous, since they have good substats, and I farmed quite a bit of it when farming for speed relics for my support unit. And then for her Salsodo pieces, she needs quite a bit of work, as both her orb and her rope are quite abysmal in terms of the stats. but they are usable. Overall, as a character, Clara has quite surprised me as how well she could perform. Despite the low investment that I've put into her, she still does well in content that I use her in, especially in Memory of Chaos and most recently Pure Fiction. She's been able to help me clear stages just as well as some of my other DPS characters, and is a character I'm very excited to build in the near future once I get enough resources to help finish her builds. Next, I'm just going to talk about some of the 4-star units that I still use, as I feel like I've talked a little bit too much in terms of my characters. We'll talk about Pela really quickly as my second most used 4-star unit. Her stats, anything interesting besides her speed stat, which is at 162. Her effect hit rate being 57.5%. She is on the Resolution Light Cone as one of the 4-star light cones that has evaded me since the launch of the game, as I'm pretty sure some of us have that one 4-star light cone we're still looking for. For her traces, she still needs quite a bit of work, especially her ultimate, needing a lot more level up. Other than that, I'm quite content in terms of her trace investments. For Eidolon, she's at E3 as I'm still looking for the elusive E4 Eidolon that I still haven't gotten despite a year of playing. And then for her relic, she's on 2-piece speed, 2-piece rainbow, and 2-piece broken keel. Most of the stats are focused into speed and effect res, and whatever effect hit rate that I can find for her pieces. Other than that, she was a unit that I slept on early in the game, as I thought I could just invest into more harmony units instead of splitting between one harmony and one defense shred. But ever since getting Jingliu, she has been a crucial part of my roster, being a universal unit that I can put on almost any team, and besides that, just a relatively good 4-star that has aged quite well. Next, we're going to talk about Tingyun, which is probably my most used 4-star in my account. For her stats, she's at 2.2k attack, which is a lot lower than I would like it to be, but it is sacrificed so that she can reach her speed stat, which is 172 speed. For Lycone, she is on Planetary Rendezvous because she is mostly ran with Jing Yuan, although I do have other options when she's not ran with him, like the Battle Pass Lycone. For her traces, mostly everything is maxed except for a couple levels and everything that isn't her skill. For Eidolon, she is at E6 thanks to the Jingliu banner. And then for her relic, she's on 2-piece speed, 2-piece musketeer, and then 2-piece broken keel. Again, most of the stats are mostly focused into speed, along with any effect res and attack percent that I can get. I am looking for a couple upgrades in terms of the attack chest piece, but that will come in due time, hopefully. Other than that, Tingyun is pretty universal, since she does something that no other character in the game currently does besides Woho, as an energy battery for your team, and is overall just a good 4-star and probably still holds the spot as the best 4-star in the game, despite being a year old, which is quite surprising. Just a great unit overall, and if you don't have her built, maybe you should look into that. The last 4-star I'm going to talk about is Qingque. Taking a look at her stats initially at first glance, they seem kind of underwhelming, but it's because I usually don't run her on this Battle Pass Lycone that I have for her, as I mostly run her with the Jing Yuan Lycone. So we'll take a look at her stats with the Jing Yuan Lycone instead. Her stats now, she bumps up to 3.1k attack, 98 speed, and a crit ratio of 77.1 crit rate over 163 crit damage. For Eidolon, she's at E6 thanks again to the Jingliu banner. Her traces, mostly everything is maxed except a couple levels on her talent and her ultimate. For her relic, she's on 4-piece Quantum and 2-piece Rudolent Arena. A couple good rolls in some of my Quantum pieces, but I haven't had the chance to farm it as much as I would like. And then for Quantum Orb for Rudolent, I would like to upgrade it in the near future. Other than that, pretty decent relics. In terms of DPS, she does quite well, being my one and only Quantum DPS. And by the fact that since she's E6, it probably helps her DPS abilities quite a lot. She's a really fun character to use with her gambling mechanic, and helps me quite a bit with simulating universe runs whenever I need to do a propagation path run. And for any quantum weak MOC bosses, she does quite well, and could even clear faster than some of my 5-stars when the stars align. A very fun character to use, and someone I would recommend building if you have the resources to spare. That's gonna do it for the character portion of this video, as I probably talked about them for a little too long. We'll go over a couple smaller things for my account, just so I can keep a record of it. For my inventory, we'll just go over everything really briefly. Here's all the upgrade materials I've accumulated throughout the 1 year of playing. Here's the light golds that I have over 1 year of pulling, like this Lando's Choice being S5 and having another S5 version. But other than that, you can take a quick look at all the 5-stars and 4-star light cones I've pulled throughout the game. Moving on to my relics, I showed you most of the good ones that I currently use in my roster. And then, despite what the number might say at the top, most of the locked relics that I have are either relics that may have potential when I roll into them, but the other locked relics are relics that have off main stats but have really good substats, like this outgoing healing boost with double crit rate and attack. And I'm saving it in the near future whenever an ice abundance character comes out that scales with double crit, which might seem crazy, but hey, Aventurine came out and he scales with defense percent and double crit rate. So you never know when these pieces might come in handy. For materials, nothing anything interesting to look at, personally speaking. Other consumables, there's your standard consumables. Trick snacks are probably the most used in mostly every account just because of the technique point recovery it offers. For mission items, here they are. It's quite fun to look back at these items and try to correlate to where you got them. Like this iron flower from the Pascal side mission. This sword item that almost every account has a different unique version in terms of the title and the little lore text, as we had different dialogue options that would change these in the Yanqing quest all the way back in 1.3. And then other items that we recently got, like the Penacony items, as well as the most crucial item on every account, the Praise of High Morals. And I think I have a decent amount at 22, but maybe you guys have more than me, who knows. Other than that, it's just fun to look back at these items, like Ethereum Wars and whatnot, just to see how the game has progressed since these events have happened. For the valuables, again, nothing really interesting to look at, as you might see a theme of me being a hoarder here. For resins, I have 16 of them, in case I ever need to make emergency relics of pieces that come out in the near future. 1.8k Starlight, as I'm saving these for future pulls. 30 Herder Bonds, since I don't really need the preservation or nihility like one in the shop, and I would rather save these for future items instead of spending them on standard banner tickets. Fuels, I have 60 of them in case I ever need to do emergency farming. For characters that I decide to randomly pull on, such as Aventurine and Sparkle, these come in handy for emergency farming. And maybe in the near future I'll spend all of them on a future relic domain, but we'll see. 35k Jade and 117 million credits, as I don't really find a lot of use in terms of the credits. And I'm saving these Jades for future pulls as well. And that's going to do it for the inventory part of my account. The last thing I want to talk about for my account is going to be the achievements, just to see how many I've had in the first year. In total, I have 547 achievements with the corresponding amount of achievements for gold, silver, and bronze trophies. And you'll see in a bit, as I go through all the achievements really quickly, you'll see that I haven't claimed a single achievement since the game has launched, and you might ask why. And the simple answer is, I don't like claiming achievements. Well, it goes a little deeper than that, as I would rather keep these jades as like a secret stash of jades, in case I need them for any emergency pulls and whatnot, as it helps me in terms of rationing my pulls for future characters, and it's just always a backup source in case I ever need emergency jades. Although, it will be quite a pain to collect all these one by one, since I do have 547 of them I need to individually click one by one, but I'll get there when the time comes. Other than that, that's gonna be it for my account showcase. It's been quite a journey for the first year of Honkai Star Rail, as the game, I believe, has only gotten better and better since the release. With all the new characters and events and game modes that come out, I'm quite excited to see what the future of Honkai Star Rail has in store. But hey, we'll see in the near future, and hopefully my account has lived up to your expectations, or maybe it hasn't. You can discuss that in the comments if you'd like. Other than that, that's gonna be it for the video. I still haven't learned to do outros despite making videos, so this is just gonna be it. Okay, bye.